Hey guys, so in this video we're going to be talking about selling based on people's personalities. We're going to be talking about DISC, D-I-S-C personality types and how to sell to them. So to kind of kick it off, there's 4 different personality types, and it does matter what personality type somebody is when you are looking to sell to them. Everybody wants to be sold differently. Everyone has different preferences and different personality types, and it really makes a huge difference in building trust and building a rapport with people based on their personality type. So in this video, we're going to dig into what are the 4 different personality types, how do you identify what type a person is, how do you sell to that person, and how should you not sell to that person. So let's just dive in. So there's 4 main personality types. So we have D, I, S, and C. So D stands for dominant, I stands for influence, S stands for steady, and C stands for compliance. All right, so you've got D, I, S, and C. Those are your main 4 personality types. So now we're going to talk a little bit about each one. All right, so D. So this stands for dominant. Ds are your more aggressive people. So if you're doing an estimate for a D, that's going to be the person who greets you out the door, and oftentimes that's going to be the person who comes barging out of the house. So some other attributes of a D is they usually speak really loud. Their tone is very direct. They're pretty stubborn people generally. They can come across rude. They can come across arrogant. They can come across like standoffish. All right, and they usually have a very direct, short, to the point, like hurry up, like let's get to it kind of attitude. All right, and they can also come across really intimidating. If you're an I or an S or a C, Ds are just like the hardest to sell to. You feel like you just can't get anywhere with them. But that's just because you're not selling to their personality type. All right, so D, dominant, to the point, very direct, very aggressive. They want to go quickly. They want to make decisive. They're also very decisive. All right, so that's your D. And how you're going to identify this person, there's a few different things. So one is they're going to be the person who, when you try to build rapport, they're not going to give you anything. So they're going to give you one-word answers. So if you walk in the door and you're like, oh, nice house. How long have you lived here for? 4 years. Oh, nice. Where did you guys move from? Minneapolis. Nice. What did you do? What brought you out here? Work. Okay, anyways, let's talk about something else. So they're going to give you those really short answers. They're also going to be impatient if you take too long. All right, so that's how you're going to identify a D. So now we have I's. All right, so I stands for influence. All right, so I's are very highly emotional people. Your I personality types are your people who all they care about is like people. They love people, they want to be liked, they love dogs, they just want to build rapport. When you walk up to their door, they're the people that just like invite you right into their house. Like the first thing they do is like, hey, can I get you a cup of coffee or water? Like make yourself comfortable, welcome to our home. Like they're really, really friendly people. All right, so that's your I personality type, high emotion. They love people. They just want to build rapport. They're very high energy and very friendly and very welcoming. So they're probably the easiest one to identify because they're just the really outgoing ones. S stands for steady. So your S personality types are people who, some characteristics of them are they're very friendly, like they're very nice. They're great listeners. They're very patient people. They tend to, take their time with things, and they want to take their time with decisions. They're never going to rush you. They don't like pressure, though, and they're just very methodical about the way that they do things. They're steady, they're consistent, they're patient, they're relaxed. They're going to be similar to the I when they greet you at the door, where they're going to be friendly with you, and they're going to be nice, but they're not going to be high energy. All right, they're a little bit more like, monotone in terms of like their aura and their presence. All right, they're a little bit more just like relaxed than an I, but they're very friendly still, very nice. So that's your S's. All right, and then you've got your C's. All right, so C stands for compliance. These are your highly analytical people. They can come across as awkward or more introverted. They're not nearly as interested in building rapport. They're the people, if you ever get to an estimate and you have someone who actually has questions written out for you, that is a C. These are oftentimes accountants, finance people, engineers, software folks. So that's your C personality types. They don't want to be pressured. They don't want to build rapport. They want to talk about every little detail about painting and all that kind of stuff. And we'll get into that. So how do you identify a C is they're not going to give you a lot of rapport. Like I's and S's will give you rapport. You know, they're going to be easy to build rapport with. D's and C's will not be as easy to build rapport with. They're just not going to be as into it naturally. But these are easy to tell apart because the D is like in your face, and the C will do it overtly. I don't know if that's the word. They're going to keep it to themselves. They're not going to be like, hey, okay, they're not going to interrupt you and tell you to get to the point. A D will do that. A C would never do that. But both these won't be easy to build rapport with, but these people will be a little more quiet, and they just won't say much until you get into painting, and then they'll have all kinds of questions. So that's kind of how you're going to identify these different personality types. So now we're going to talk about how to sell to these different personality types. All right, so you D personalities, you're going to want to be direct, persistent with like getting to the point, like short answers. All right, so when a D comes to an estimate, the thing that a D wants is they just want to make a decision. Like the thing that's great about selling to a D, like I've got a lot of D, so Ds are easy for me because I don't need they don't care to like build a ton of rapport. Like they don't need that. They just want to get to the point. They just want you not to waste their time. They just want to make a decision. They've already got in their head, like they don't care much about price. They kind of are like, hey, if I trust the guy, I think they're going to get it done and the price is in the ballpark, I'll do it. Like that's kind of their attitude about it. They're very decisive. They just want to get it taken care of. So how you're going to adjust your estimate to a D is number one, if the rapport's not there, don't force it, but also don't quit totally and give up on it. All right. One of the best ways to sell me as a D is to build rapport and be friendly, and I'm not going to really give it to you. And as long as it doesn't phase you, and then you just cater to me, and then you keep trying to build rapport with me, eventually I'm going to like you. All right, so the D's are going to build a bunch of rapport with you at the end of the estimate after, they've kind of got this hard front on, like I'm a big tough guy, but really I'm like the easiest sell in the world because I'm so damn decisive. All right, so with a D, you build rapport. If it's not there, move on, but don't quit on it. Bring up rapport around the walk around, bring up rapport around the corners of the house, bring up the rapport when you're walking from the inside of the house to the outside. Like you still keep trying at it, but you don't force it. And then when you're talking to them about stuff, don't beat around the bush, be direct. Are you planning on doing this year? Okay, cool. Do you want me to scrape sand and prime that? Do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do this? If they're not sure, do you want me to put that as options? Okay, I'll put that as options. And you move quickly. So when you're doing like your need satisfaction selling cycle, you're not drawing it out. You're getting to the point. You're like, hey man, I know you probably know this, but basically this is peeling paint. It's caused by weather damage. This is an area that's going to be, have a lot of trouble in the future. And so I recommend spending a little extra time with it. Basically what I recommend doing is scraping, sanding, and priming these areas. Scrape, get off the bad paint, sand it just to rough up the area, better bite for the primer, and then we lay down the primer to really seal that up before we paint it. Is that what you would like us to do for all these peeling areas around the house, is just to scrape, sand, and prime them? All right, perfect. So it's a lot more to the point, all right, with a D, and they're willing to be decisive. So that's how you're going to sell to a D. Okay, so how you're going to sell to an I is very different how you sell to a D. And it kind of makes sense, right? I's are influential people, highly emotional. They love building rapport. They love making friends. And so how you're going to sell to an I is you're not going to talk much about paint. You're mostly going to talk about whatever they want to talk about. You're going to talk about their dog, the last trip they went on, what they're doing this summer, their kids, their house, right? Like those kind of things is what you want to talk about with an I. Of course, you have to talk about the paint stuff, but when you get to paint, don't give them a lot of details. They hate details. They get overwhelmed easily by details. So you don't want to go into a ton of detail with a high I. You want to give them just give them the basics. Just tell them what to do. So, if I'm explaining types of paint to an I, I'm gonna with a D, I'm just gonna say, hey man, basically like you're looking for a good quality paint. There's two that we could do. We could do super paint or we could do duration. I'd probably recommend doing super paint. Is that what you'd like me to do? Great. Now with an I, you're gonna just tell them what to do a little bit more. You're gonna say, yeah, we've basically got a few different kinds of paint. We've got this one, and this one, and basically like they're all good. For you guys, I'd probably recommend doing this one. It's a great paint. It'll make your house look really good. It'll last, but it's not too expensive. So you're talking a little bit more vague with an I. It's not that much more expensive. just kind of just enough information for them to make a decision, but not tons of detail. Like they don't need to know if it's acrylic or 100% acrylic latex, or how long the warranty is, or how thick, how many mils you put it on, or any of those details like a C would want to know. But an I, they just want the basics. Just help them make a decision, give them the basics. Oh, it'll look great. It's a great paint. It'll last for you, and it's not too expensive. Is that the one you want to use? Okay, cool. Let's move on. So anyways, tell me more about your dog. And that's how you sell an I. All right, so how you're going to sell an S is a little bit different from a D and an I. Now, how you're going to sell an S is kind of a combination between selling an I and selling a C. All right, so they still want to build rapport. You know, S-type personalities are really friendly. They're just great people. They're great listeners. They're very patient, relaxed, calm. So like when you're in the house of a S personality type, it's very peaceful. It's like very quiet and zen, right? And when you're in the house of an I, it's like high energy, like there's noises, there's colors everywhere, like a lot is happening. Like sometimes it's actually loud in the house, like there's TVs on or there's kids running around playing. Like, so like the space is a little more relaxed. So slow it down. With S's, literally slow it down. So for me, I got to walk into a house. I'm a pretty fast-paced guy. When I get to an S, I slow everything down. I'm like, hey, I'm Eric. Nice to meet you. How are you guys today? Great. Let's take a walk inside. And we like just take our time. And I slow down. I build rapport. Once the rapport is not there, I talk about paint. I can spend a lot more time talking about paint and details with an S than I would with an I. And I'm going to talk a little more monotone. I'm going to talk a little softer. I'm going to talk a little slower. I'm going to sit back in my chair a little more. I'm not going to be as like all over the place like you would be with an I. You know, you're going to be more gestures with an I, more excitement in your voice with an I. With an S, sit back, relax, take your time at the estimate. Answer their questions. There's no rush. Like, just take your time and they'll make a decision. All right, now how do we sell a C? All right, so selling a C is different from all the others. C's care about details. Details. They need to know everything that they could possibly know. So with a C, you're going to get in there, rapport's not going to really be there, and they're not a D, obviously, so they're clearly a C. And if they're a C, then you just know that this is time for me to sit back and just say, like, what questions do you guys have? And whenever they ask a question, you answer in a lot of detail, and then you say, did that answer a question? Great. What other questions do you have? And you're just going to take your time answering. It's like being in an interview with a C. Okay, they want lots of options. They want to know every detail. They want to know when you're explaining things, they need all the information to make a decision. So if you're telling them this is the prep work we recommend, you've got to tell them why. You got to tell them how long it's going to take, how much longer it's going to last, how much more it'll cost. They need to know everything. All right, so just take your time and really focus on answering their questions, being really detailed and really thorough with them. And that's how you sell to a C. It's really that straightforward. You're, of course, still going to try to build rapport, but again, like with the D, you're not going to force it. And eventually, because you're mirroring them, eventually they'll come around and they'll start to build rapport with you. All right, so that's how you sell to a C. All right, so now we're going to talk about what not to do when selling to a different personality type. So let's start with Ds. All right, so what you don't want to do with a D is really two things. Number one, don't waste their time. All right, don't waste their time. Don't talk about things they're not interested in. Don't go into more detail than you need to. You've really got to read their body language and you got to get to the point. Number two is don't force the rapport. If they don't want to build rapport, you continuing to force it is really going to hurt your chances. Don't force the rapport. The best way to build a rapport with a D is to mirror them and be just like them, and they won't be able to help themselves but liking you. All right, and then you'll build a rapport with them at the end. All right, so what you shouldn't do with an I personality type is really two main things. Number one is do not go into too much details. You will actually notice an I personality type, they'll check out if you start talking about paint for too long. They'll literally they'll sit back in their chair, the emotion will go out of their face, they'll start to look around, they'll be visibly disinterested in you if you start talking about too much details. The second thing not to do with an I is don't not build rapport. If they don't love you, or more importantly, if they don't think you love them, they're not going to buy from you. If they think that you just love them as people, they'll buy from you. So just love them, care about them, like them, listen to them, ask questions about them, be interested in them, and they'll buy from you. That's what's important to I's. All right, so what you don't want to do with S personality types is you don't want to pressure them. So don't pressure them and don't rush them. Those are the two main things that you don't want to do with an S personality type. Don't rush them and don't pressure them. Just let them go through their process. Sit back in your chair, take your time and be patient with them. Don't rush them, don't pressure them. What you don't want to do with a C personality type is force rapport. So don't force rapport. For a C personality type, if you get in there and you're building rapport with them, they'll feel like you're wasting their time. How that occurs to them is they say, aren't you here for a painting estimate? You're wasting my time. There's a lot to cover. I have lots of questions. There's a lot of information I need. You're wasting my time talking about rapport. We have a lot of painting to talk about. So don't force rapport and don't lack detail. If you're giving them half-assed answers, they're just going to get annoyed and frustrated with you, and they don't want to constantly be correcting you on how detailed you need to be. They want to write their check to the person that is as detailed as they are, because they need this job to be perfect, exactly how they want it. And so they need to know that you know what that is. So you need to make sure to be very detailed with them and very thorough with them. So don't cut corners, don't rush, similar to with an S personality type. So that's kind of the basics for each personality type. Now, I have two more pieces of advice as you start trying to sell for personalities. So number one is, in general, like a shortcut to all of this, is every one of these people, every personality type has a tone, like a certain tone they speak in. There's a pace, like how quickly they speak. So loud and direct, energetic, pretty fast speaker, quiet and slower speaker, sometimes even more quiet and also a slow speaker. So they have a tone, they have a pace, and then they also have body language. All right, this guy's gonna puff out the chest and look like this, and right, and they're gonna move fast and they're gonna like be disinterested and like that. Your eyes, they're gonna be like all over the place. They're gonna be really animated and lots of body language and reaching forward and shaking your hand, and they're gonna be really, really animated. Your S's, they're gonna be like so laid back. Their body language, they'll be sitting back, relaxed, chill, and same with your C's. So mirroring, just mirror your customer. Right when you walk in the door, you don't need to know it's a D. You just, when he is talking fast and loud, make sure you talk fast and loud. When the person who opens the door is talking quiet and slow, you talk quiet and slow. And just look for yourself real quick. If you're being sold to, and whatever personality type you are, just imagine the opposite one coming in to sell you. So if you're a D, imagine someone showing up to your house who's like kind of socially awkward and quiet and just goes into excruciating amounts of detail. I literally would be shaking with anxiety and frustration at how slow it's going. If you're an I personality type and you've got like this D who's just kind of rude, they're a dick, man. Like, you don't like them at all. They didn't take any time with you. If you're an S and a D comes in, it's way too high energy, high pressure, like it's a huge turnoff. So you'll notice that any of these personality types selling to another one is gonna just naturally create friction. And so the best thing you can do is the moment someone opens the door, match them. All right, if they're kind of soft-spoken and quiet, but you come in and you're all loud and aggressive, it just makes them uncomfortable. Make sure you match them. So you wanna basically match their pace, their tone, and their body language. That's tip number one. Tip number two is think about someone in your life who really embodies one of these personality types. So think of someone who's a high D in your life, or someone who's a high I in your life, or someone a high S and a high C, and create an avatar. So when you walk into an estimate, and you meet this D, it's like, oh, that's just Eric. Or, oh, hey, that's just Julie. Like, you can start to know, because you know people in your life, and you know how they operate, and you know how they work. And making an avatar for each of these will really help you sell to these personality types and not be threatened by them. Because, you've got a close friend who's, like, if you're a S, you've got a close friend who's a D, and you don't take them, when that person's being a dick, you're not taking it personal, but you take it personal at the estimate. So if you go into there kind of knowing, like, here's your avatars, it'll help you deal with these different personality types and understand them, because you know all these people. So that's kind of the short and sweet on how you sell the personality types. The best thing that you can do from here is just notice it, keep working on it, keep looking at it, and work on mirroring your customers.